Is this what structured learning looks like now, Amara? The voice, crisp and cold as the conditioned air, sliced through the quiet concentration in the kitchen. It was Arthur Sterling's voice, a sound engineered for boardrooms, for quarterly earnings calls, for conversations that ended with the firm, quiet click of a Montblanc pen being placed on a mahogany desk. It was not a voice for this room, with its scent of warm milk and cinnamon, but he wore it into his home like a tailored suit, and it never seemed to fit. Amara did not startle. Her shoulders, relaxed just a moment before as she leaned over the chessboard, remained steady. She slowly straightened her back, a subtle, fluid motion that was in itself an act of defiance. Before she turned to face him, her eyes met Leo's. The boy's face, alive with a rare spark of intellectual fire seconds ago, was now clouded with the familiar anxiety that crept in whenever his father entered a room. Beside him, his twin sister, Maya, narrowed her eyes, her small hand instinctively moving to protect a black pawn on the board as if shielding it from a sudden gust of wind. Only then did Amara turn. Arthur Sterling stood in the archway connecting the kitchen to the great hall, his silhouette framed by the cold architectural precision of his home. His tie was loosened by a perfect, calculated inch. His expression was one of profound disappointment, the kind a man reserves for a stock that has failed to perform. His gaze wasn't on his children. It was fixed on her. "I believe I was clear," he continued, striding forward. The expensive leather of his shoes made no sound on the polished Italian marble. 4 o'clock is quantitative reasoning. 5 o'clock is Mandarin phonetics with Miss Albright via Zoom. The schedule is laminated. It's on the refrigerator. Did the lamination somehow fail? He gestured with a sharp, dismissive flick of his wrist toward the Sub-Zero refrigerator, a monolith of stainless steel where a neatly printed schedule was held by a powerful magnet. It was a beautiful, efficient schedule, mapping every hour of his children's lives from dawn until dusk. It was also a cage. Amara's gaze followed his, then returned to meet his eyes. Her voice, when she spoke, was low and even, a stark contrast to his brittle tenor. "We finished the quantitative reasoning worksheets at 3:45. Leo was struggling with the concept of sequential outcomes, so I thought a practical application might help." "A practical application," Arthur repeated, the words dripping with derision. He stopped at the edge of the massive marble island, looking down at the chessboard as if it were an infestation. Textbooks and workbooks were pushed into a neat stack to the side, subservient to the 64 squares of alternating ivory and ebony. "You mean a game? You abandoned his curriculum for a game?" "No," Amara said, her composure unwavering. "I used the game to teach the curriculum." She pointed to the board where Leo's white knight was positioned to threaten Maya's queen and rook simultaneously. Leo couldn't grasp probability on paper, but here he can see it. He can see how one move creates a dozen potential futures, and he has to calculate the most advantageous one. That's sequential outcomes. That's quantitative reasoning. For a fleeting second, Arthur's eyes flickered to the board. A flicker of something, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the reflexive analysis of a man who saw everything as a system to be optimized, crossed his face. It was there and then it was gone, shuttered behind the impenetrable certainty of his own authority. "I do not pay you for your educational philosophy, Amara. I pay you to execute a plan that has been designed by experts who charge $400 an hour. Your job is to ensure the children adhere to that plan. It is not to improvise. It is certainly not to introduce toys when their entire academic future is on the line." The word hung in the air between them, toys. It was meant to diminish, to shrink her methods and, by extension, her. Leo flinched as if struck. This toy was the first thing in months that had made him feel intelligent. Would you endure this? The question bloomed in the quiet space of Amara's mind, a silent inquiry to an unseen audience. Would you stand here and absorb the condescension of a man who cannot see the genius blooming in his own son, all to protect that boy's fragile confidence? She held Arthur's gaze, her expression unreadable. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her anger, her frustration, her profound disappointment in him. She had been hired as a caregiver, a glorified scheduler and chauffeur for the Sterling twins. It was a role they expected her to inhabit fully, to be contained by, but Amara had never been good at staying in boxes. "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling," she said, her tone still meticulously level, "your expert's methods were causing Leo significant distress. His worksheets were returned with a 40% success rate. After 30 minutes with this toy, he correctly solved 3 problems that stumped him for an hour yesterday. The results are on the worksheet right there." She gestured to the neat pile of books. It was a direct challenge, a presentation of data, spoken in a language she thought he might understand. He didn't even glance at the paper. His focus was on control. "Clean this up," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a register his employees knew meant the conversation was over. "Put the game away. Get Maya ready for her violin practice, and put Leo in front of the laptop for his session with Miss Albright. I don't want to walk in here and see this again. Is that understood?" He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked away, the silent soles of his shoes carrying him back into the world of important calls and consequential decisions, leaving behind a silence thick with unspoken words. Maya looked at Amara, her young face a storm of indignation. Leo just stared at the chessboard, the light in his eyes extinguished. He gently pushed the white knight over onto its side, a gesture of surrender. Amara reached out and set the piece upright again. Her fingers lingered for a moment on the carved ivory, cool and smooth beneath her touch. She looked at the board, not as a game, but as a battlefield. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that the most important match had only just begun. 2 days later, Amara stands in the sterile white office of the Pemberton Academy's leading child psychologist. The air is thick with the scent of leather-bound books and quiet judgment. Seated around a small, circular table are Catherine Sterling, Arthur's wife, a woman whose warmth was as curated as the art on her walls, and Miss Albright, the online tutor, appearing on a large screen like a disembodied oracle of academic standards. Amara was asked to attend, but it is clear she is a defendant, not a participant. Catherine is immaculate in a silk blouse, her posture a testament to years of ballet and social discipline. She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. Miss Albright was just expressing some concerns, Amara, about Leo's preparation. She feels there are some conflicting methodologies at play. On the screen, Miss Albright nods gravely. "With all due respect, Mrs. Sterling, the methods I employ are state-accredited. We are building foundational knowledge. When I hear that Leo is spending his study time on games, it undermines the structural integrity of his learning pyramid." The corporate jargon feels alien and absurd in a conversation about a 10-year-old boy. Amara remains silent, her hands resting in her lap. She can feel the familiar weight of a small, carved object in her pocket, the worn ivory knight. She had brought it with her, a silent talisman of a logic they refused to see. Catherine leans forward, her voice a soft, conspiratorial whisper that is far more damning than a shout. "Amara, we appreciate your efforts, we truly do, but you must understand your role. You are here to provide support, to maintain the structure, not to build a new one. When you introduce these creative tangents, you're not just confusing Leo, you're questioning our judgment. You're questioning Mr. Sterling's investment in these world-class resources." It's a perfectly executed microaggression, wrapped in the language of concern. The message is clear. You are the help. We are the architects. Know your place. How many conversations like this had she endured in her life? How many times had her intelligence been repackaged as interference? It was a subtle, persistent violence of dismissal. "Leo is a unique thinker," Amara says, her voice still quiet, still even. "Sometimes the straight path is not the one that leads him to the answer." Miss Albright scoffs, a faint, tinny sound from the speakers. "The path to academic excellence is a straight path. It is paved with discipline, repetition, and proven pedagogy. There are no shortcuts and certainly no galloping knights." Catherine places a perfectly manicured hand on Amara's arm. The touch is meant to be reassuring, but it feels like an anchor. "Just stick to the schedule, dear. That's all we ask. Leo's future is too important for experiments. If his scores on the upcoming assessment don't show significant improvement, Arthur and I will have to re-evaluate his support system here at home." The threat is delivered with a flawless, regretful smile. Re-evaluate his support system. A beautifully sterile euphemism for firing her. The meeting is over. Amara is dismissed with a nod, like a subordinate whose input was tolerated but ultimately irrelevant. As she walks out of the pristine office and into the long, echoing hallway, she slips her hand into her pocket, her fingers close around the cool, familiar shape of the ivory knight. They see a toy. She feels a key. And in the quiet solitude of the corridor, she feels a familiar, cold resolve settle over her. They had drawn their line in the sand. Now she would have to draw hers. The week crawls by, each day thick with a tension that settles over the Sterling household like a fine dust. Every interaction is measured, every glance freighted with meaning. Amara adheres to the schedule with monastic precision. The chessboard is gone, stored away in a closet. Leo's sessions with Miss Albright are miserable affairs. His face on the laptop screen a small, pale mask of compliance. His worksheet scores plummet. Amara watches, her heart a tight knot in her chest. She sees the spark in him dimming, the vibrant, non-linear mind that saw the world in patterns and possibilities being forced into the gray, rigid columns of rote memorization. She says nothing, simply ensuring his pencils are sharpened, his water glass is full, and his posture is correct. She plays her role perfectly, and it is the hardest performance of her life. The breaking point arrives on a Wednesday night, 48 hours before the critical assessment. Arthur comes home late to find the house silent. He walks past the dining room and stops. Leo is at the table, a single worksheet in front of him, his head in his hands. He isn't crying. He's just shut down. The page is a jumble of multi-step word problems involving train speeds, percentages, and logic puzzles. The very things Amara's chess lessons were built to decode. The paper is still blank. "Leo," Arthur says, his voice softer than usual, stripped of its boardroom authority by the sight of his son's quiet despair. "What's wrong? Is this too difficult?" Leo looks up. His eyes are hollow. "It doesn't make sense," he whispers. "The words are all mixed up. I can't see the path." Arthur picks up the worksheet, his brow furrowed. He is a man who solves billion-dollar logistical nightmares before breakfast. He cannot understand why his son cannot solve a 10th-grade logic problem. He tries to explain it, his voice patient at first, then tightening with frustration as Leo's confusion only deepens. "It's simple, son," Arthur says, his finger jabbing at the paper. "If train A leaves at this time and train B leaves at that time, you just calculate the variable. It's a linear equation." "But it's not a line," Leo chokes out, a sob finally breaking through. "It's a maze, and I'm lost." That is when Amara enters. She had been watching from the doorway, her presence a silent, steady hum in the background. She doesn't look at Arthur. She looks at Leo. What would you do next, watching a child break under the weight of a system that refuses to bend for him? She steps forward and places a glass of water next to Leo. Then she turns to Arthur. "May I try something, Mr. Sterling?" Arthur looks from his broken son to this infuriatingly calm woman. His entire world is built on the principle of control, of proven systems and predictable outcomes. Everything in him screams to say no, to stick to the plan, to trust the experts. But the plan is failing. The experts are failing. His son is failing. "Fine," he says, the word clipped, surrendering to a desperation he would never admit aloud. "You have 1 week's worth of authority condensed into one night. The assessment is Friday morning. His score on that test is the only metric I care about. If it's not an A, Amara, if he doesn't place in the advanced program, you're gone." It's not a threat. It's a contractual term. A key performance indicator. Her entire future in this home, her connection to this child she has grown to care for so deeply, is now tied to a single letter on a piece of paper. The deadline is set. The stakes are absolute. She is locked in with no way back and no room for failure. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," she says, her voice betraying nothing. "That's all I need." The moment Arthur leaves the room, a new energy fills the space. Amara doesn't coddle Leo or offer platitudes. She moves with the quiet efficiency of a master strategist clearing the fog of war. She takes the offensive worksheet and tears it neatly in half. Leo's gasp is sharp, a sound of both shock and relief. "Forget the trains," she says, her voice low and conspiratorial. "Let's build a better engine." She retrieves the chessboard from the closet, its presence on the dining table a flag of rebellion. Then she goes to the kitchen and returns with a stack of colored dry erase markers. The glass wall of the dining room, a vast, floor-to-ceiling pane overlooking a manicured Zen garden becomes her canvas. It's the closest thing the house has to a whiteboard. Your father sees a line, she begins, drawing a straight black line across the glass. Miss Albright sees a pyramid. They're not wrong, they're just incomplete. She picks up a blue marker. A mind like yours doesn't move in a straight line. It moves like this. With a few deft strokes, she draws the L-shaped path of a knight, 2 steps forward, 1 to the side. She takes the first word problem from the discarded worksheet. A company has 5 departments: sales, marketing, HR, engineering, and finance. A new project requires 1 representative from each. Marketing cannot work directly with finance. Sales must be paired with engineering. HR cannot be the last department chosen. List 3 possible team combinations. This isn't a math problem, Amara explains, her marker flying across the glass. It's a board placement problem. She draws 5 large squares on the glass, labeling them with the department names. She hands Leo the red marker. The rules are your opponent's moves. Marketing cannot work with finance. Okay, that means they can't be in adjacent squares. Draw a red wall between them. Leo, his earlier despair replaced by a dawning fascination, draws a thick red line separating the 2 squares. Good, Amara says. Sales must be paired with engineering, so they are your king and queen. They move together. Circle them in green. He does. Slowly, a visual map emerges from the dense text. The abstract variables become tangible pieces on a board. The confusing negative constraints, the cannots and must-nots, become simple walls and block squares. Maya, drawn by the activity, watches silently, her brow furrowed in concentration. Now, Amara says, pointing to the knight's path she drew earlier, find the combinations. Find the path that jumps over the walls and obeys the rules. Suddenly, Leo sees it. His eyes light up. Oh, he says, grabbing a marker. If sales and engineering are here and HR can't be last, then the knight's move, it works. He quickly sketches out a valid combination, then another, his movements sure and confident. He isn't just solving the problem, he's reverse engineering its logic. He's seeing the system behind the chaos. It is a moment of pure, incandescent competence, both his and hers. Just then, a small chime indicates the start of the 8 p.m. Zoom session. Miss Albright's face appears on the tablet Maya had set on the table. She sees the glass wall covered in what looks like graffiti, the children out of their seats, the chessboard sitting in a place of honor. Her expression sours. What on earth is going on here? She asks, her voice tight with disapproval. Amara, is this your idea of a review session? This is absolute nonsense. None of this will be on the test. The small victory, the beautiful, fragile spark of Leo's confidence, is immediately doused by the cold water of systemic disapproval. Amara doesn't turn to the screen. She just hands Leo a cloth. Wipe it clean, Leo, she says softly. You don't need the map anymore. You've already memorized the territory. Later that night, long after Maya is asleep, Amara finds Leo in the library. He isn't reading. He's sitting in one of the oversized leather armchairs, his small frame swallowed by its immensity, staring at the intricate patterns of the Persian rug. The chessboard is on the ottoman in front of him, the pieces set up as if awaiting a game. He has been replaying the lessons, she knows, but the confidence she saw earlier has been chipped away by Miss Albright's dismissive tone and the looming pressure of the assessment. She walks over quietly and sits on the ottoman opposite him. She doesn't speak, simply waits. Amara, he finally says, his voice barely a whisper. Am I stupid? The question is a punch to the gut. It's the core fear of every child who learns differently, the quiet, corrosive lie whispered by a world that values conformity over creativity. No, Leo, she says, her voice firm but gentle. You are not stupid. You are the furthest thing from it. But I don't see the lines, he says, frustrated. Dad and Miss Albright, they see lines. To be to see. My brain doesn't do that. It goes everywhere else first. Amara reaches for the worn ivory knight from the board. She rolls it between her thumb and forefinger, the polished wood smooth and cool. She places it in the palm of his hand and closes his fingers around it. Look at the other pieces, she says softly. The rook, it moves in a straight line, powerful but predictable. The bishop, it also moves in a straight line diagonally, powerful but predictable. The queen is the most powerful, yes, but even she follows the lines. Everyone can see where she is going. She pauses, letting him feel the weight of the piece in his hand. But the knight, she continues, tapping his closed fist gently. The knight is different. It's the only piece that can jump over others. It doesn't follow the lines. It makes its own path. When an opponent is setting up their defenses, they plan for the rooks and the bishops. They often forget to plan for the knight because its move is unexpected. It sees angles no one else sees. She looks him directly in the eye. Your brain doesn't move in lines because it's not a rook, it's a knight. It jumps over the obvious answers to find the brilliant ones. That's not a weakness, Leo. It is a superpower. Tears well in the boy's eyes, but they are not tears of sadness. They are tears of recognition, of a profound and liberating relief. He opens his hand and stares at the ivory knight as if seeing it for the first time. He finally has a language for who he is. He isn't broken, he's strategic. He isn't slow, he's creative. He wraps his small hand around hers, the knight pressed between their palms. "Thank you," he whispers. In that moment, Amara's resolve solidifies into something unbreakable. This is no longer about a job or an assessment. It is a moral obligation. She will not let this world, with its straight lines and rigid expectations, break the spirit of this brilliant, unique child. If you were there, watching this quiet, powerful connection being forged, would you step closer to help, or would you stay silent and let the system run its course? Amara knows she cannot stay silent. She has to change the game itself. The next day, while the twins are at a music lesson, Amara is tasked with organizing Arthur's home office. The space is a monument to minimalist efficiency, a sleek desk, a single ergonomic chair, and walls of built-in shelving holding meticulously organized files. It's the heart of Sterling Enterprises, the domestic outpost of a global empire. As she dusts a shelf, she hears Arthur's voice from the speakerphone on his desk. He's in the middle of a heated video conference. "Absolutely unacceptable, Mark," Arthur is saying, his voice a low growl. "Ramirez was one of our most promising young analysts. He single-handedly identified the flaw in the Singapore acquisition model, and we lost him to a competitor for a lateral title and a 10% salary bump. How?" A tinny voice responds from the speaker. Arthur, his performance reviews were inconsistent. He was brilliant on the macro-level projects, no doubt, but his weekly KPI were all over the place. He missed deadlines on the procedural reports. His time management scores were in the lowest quartile. HR had him flagged. He didn't fit the advancement track. He didn't fit, Arthur scoffs. Mark, the man, was a visionary. He didn't see the next quarter. He saw the next decade. We have an entire system of metrics, and we used it to manage a genius right out the door. What is the point of our rigorous evaluation process if it can't tell the difference between a thoroughbred and a plow horse? Amara freezes, her hand hovering over a leather-bound folio. Her breath catches in her throat. He didn't fit the advancement track. His weekly KPI were all over the place. The system can't tell the difference between a thoroughbred and a plow horse. It's the exact same problem, the exact same trap. On the vast corporate chessboard of Sterling Enterprises, they were promoting the rooks and bishops, the steady, predictable, linear thinkers who excelled at weekly reports and procedural tasks. But they were losing their knights, the unconventional, creative, non-linear thinkers like Ramirez, who could jump over obstacles and see the game-changing moves, because the system had no metric to measure their value. The cost, as Arthur himself was yelling into the phone, was a catastrophic loss of talent, innovation, and vision. He was bemoaning the very systemic flaw that he was enforcing with draconian rigidity in his own home. He was complaining about losing an employee like Ramirez while actively punishing his son for being just like him. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. The trap is not just in the house, it's in the foundation of everything he has built. It's a culture of conformity, a system that prizes predictable performance over disruptive brilliance. And it is costing him dearly on all fronts. Amara looks around the silent, orderly office. She sees the company's mission statement framed on the wall: innovate, disrupt, lead. It's a lie. The real mission statement is the one she's hearing over the speakerphone: conform, comply, leave if you can't. She now understands the full scope of the battle. It isn't just about saving Leo's academic career. It isn't just about keeping her job. It's about exposing a fundamental, systemic flaw that is crushing human potential from the playroom to the boardroom. And she, the invisible caregiver, is the only one who can see the whole board. The choice is crystallizing before her: comply with her role and let Leo and others like him get ground down by the system, or resist and risk losing everything to fix it. The phone call in Arthur's office is a revelation for Amara, but it is a revelation she must keep to herself. That evening, her fragile new strategy is shattered. Catherine Sterling summons her to the living room. The atmosphere is glacial. Miss Albright is on the large television screen again, her expression grim. The tutor had held a final prep session with Leo that afternoon and had been horrified. He kept referring to the problems as in-game scenarios, Miss Albright reports, her voice laced with professional outrage. He tried to explain a probability matrix using something called a Sicilian defense. Mrs. Sterling, I cannot in good conscience endorse this child for the assessment. He is utterly unprepared. He has been confused by this alternative instruction. Catherine turns to Amara, her face a mask of cold fury. It's not the cartoonish anger of a villain. It's the human, misguided anger of a mother terrified of her child's failure, a fear that has curdled into blame. I was explicit, Amara, Catherine says, her voice dangerously quiet. I told you to stop. I told you to stick to the schedule. You went behind my back. You disregarded my instructions and you have, as Miss Albright says, confused him at the most critical possible moment. I was following Mr. Sterling's directive, Amara replies, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. He asked me to prepare Leo for the assessment. By playing games. Catherine's laugh is a short, sharp, ugly sound. My husband was desperate. You took advantage of that. You are a caregiver, Amara. You are not an educator. You have fundamentally overstepped your role in this household. A door closes, metaphorically and literally. The fragile alliance with Arthur, born of his desperation, means nothing now. She is isolated. Catherine, the lady of the house, has passed her verdict. You will have no further contact with Leo regarding his schoolwork, Catherine decrees. You will confine yourself to your stated duties. After his assessment on Friday, Arthur and I will make a final decision about your employment, but I think you and I both know what that decision is likely to be. It's the eve of the final battle, and her king has been cornered. Her tools have been taken away. Her allies have turned against her. The system has pushed back hard, protecting its own rigid inefficiency. She is alone on the brink of being fired, with the fate of a child's confidence resting in the balance. Later, in the quiet of her own small room, Amara feels the full weight of her isolation. All is lost. She could pack her bags now, leave before the inevitable humiliation of Friday's failure. It would be the easy thing to do. But then she thinks of Leo whispering, "It's a maze, and I'm lost." She thinks of his face when he understood the power of the night. She thinks of the analyst, Ramirez, a brilliant mind discarded by a system that couldn't see him. What would you sacrifice to stay true to what you know is right? For Amara, the answer is clear. She opens her suitcase, but not to pack. She takes out a single, pristine notebook and a pen. She will not let Leo fail. She will not let the system win. She makes a quiet vow in the stillness of the night, a promise to a boy and to herself. She will forge him a key to escape the maze, even if it's the last thing she does in this house. Amara works through the night, the single lamp on her desk carving a small circle of light out of the darkness. This is her endgame. Barred from teaching Leo directly, she must give him the tools to teach himself. Her plan is quiet, intelligent, and deeply subversive. It is an act of pure, distilled competence. She takes the sample assessment test Miss Albright had emailed, a dense 50-page document of the most complex problems Leo would face. For hours, she decodes it. She is not just a caregiver. Her mind, honed by years of academic pursuits she never speaks of, is a finely tuned analytical engine. She sees the patterns, the recurring logical structures hidden beneath the story problems about factory outputs and ridiculous travel scenarios. Then, the assembly of evidence begins. In her notebook, she doesn't write out answers. She creates a playbook. Each page features a single logic problem from the sample test on the left. On the right, she draws a small, clean diagram of a chessboard in a critical position. A problem about resource allocation becomes a lesson in controlling the center of the board. A probability question is illustrated by a knight's fork, showing how one move can create multiple simultaneous threats and opportunities. A complex sequencing puzzle is explained as a fianchetto, developing a piece to exert influence from a distance. It is a work of art, a Rosetta Stone for a mind like Leo's. It translates the dense, intimidating language of the test into the elegant, intuitive language he now understands. She is not giving him the answers, she is giving him the algorithm. She is packaging her entire teaching philosophy into a single, elegant manuscript. By 4 a.m., it is done. The notebook is thin, unassuming. It looks like nothing more than a journal. Before she closes it, she takes the worn ivory knight from her pocket and tucks it into a small elastic band on the inside cover. It is his secret weapon. Her final move is one of faith. She tiptoes to Leo's room. He is asleep, the sheets tangled around him, his face troubled even in slumber. She places the notebook on his nightstand next to his lamp. She doesn't wake him. She doesn't leave a note. The playbook must be something he discovers for himself, a secret between them. The next morning, the day of the test, the house is thick with a funereal silence. Amara prepares breakfast as usual. Catherine ignores her completely. Arthur gives her a single hard look that says, "Today is the day of reckoning." Amara simply nods. Her work is done. She has placed her pieces on the board. She has prepared her champion. She has laid her quiet, elegant trap for a system that believes it has already won. Now, all she can do is wait for the game to play out. As she drives Leo to the Pemberton Academy, a place that represents the proving ground for his entire future, she says nothing. She just gives his shoulder a light squeeze before he gets out of the car. It's all the encouragement she is allowed to give, and all the encouragement he needs. Arthur Sterling comes home early that afternoon. The assessment results are due to be posted online at 4 p.m. And for the first time in years, a knot of anxiety has disrupted the placid surface of his control. He walks into his silent, cavernous home, expecting to find Amara packing her bags and Catherine drafting an ad for a new, more compliant caregiver. He finds the kitchen empty. He walks through the dining room and into the library, and that is where he freezes in the doorway. The scene before him is not what he expected. It is quiet, yes, but it is not a scene of defeat. Amara is there, sitting on the ottoman. Meyer is beside her, and Leo is standing in front of them, in front of the large glass wall that still bears the faint ghosts of Amara's marker drawings. He is the one holding the marker now, and he is not talking about school. On the glass, Leo has drawn a crude but recognizable diagram of a supply chain network, taken directly from a quarterly report he'd seen on Arthur's desk. "See," Leo is saying, his voice bursting with an excitement Arthur hasn't heard in years. "Everyone at your company is trying to move the product like a rook, in a straight line from the factory to the warehouse to the distributor, but the trade tariff is here." He draws a big red X on the direct path. "The path is blocked," Maya chimes in, "so you're stuck." "Exactly," Leo says, "but you're not stuck if you think like the knight." He picks up the small ivory knight from the chessboard and uses it to trace a path on the glass. "You don't go through the tariff, you jump over it. You reroute the supply line through the smaller secondary port in Malaysia, 2 steps this way, and then air freight the final leg to the assembly plant, 1 step that way. You avoid the tariff, cut delivery time by 3 days, and the air freight cost is less than the tariff penalty." Arthur feels the air leave his lungs. It is the exact, elegant, unconventional solution that a team of his 6-figure logistics experts had been struggling to find for 2 weeks. And his 10-year-old son had just mapped it out on a glass wall in less than 2 minutes, using a chess piece as his guide. He looks from the diagram to Amara. She is watching Leo, a small, proud smile on her face. She hasn't prompted him. She hasn't fed him the answer. She has simply given him a new way to see the world. And in doing so, she has unlocked a part of his son Arthur didn't even know existed. Did you feel that shift? That beautiful, quiet click of a world turning right side up? It was the sound of a billion-dollar CEO realizing that his entire understanding of value, of intelligence, of talent, was fundamentally, catastrophically flawed. "Leo," Arthur says, his voice hoarse. Leo turned, startled, the marker still in his hand. "Dad, I was just showing Maya." Arthur walks slowly into the room. He doesn't look at the supply chain diagram. He looks at his son's face, which is bright and confident and utterly without fear. Then he looks at Amara. The public in this test was never a crowd, it was him. He was the only audience that mattered. And he had just witnessed a command performance. The assessment scores, Arthur says, pulling out his phone. They're posted. He navigates to the school's parent portal. A hush falls over the room. He finds Leo's name, clicks on it, and stares at the screen. Cognitive skills assessment, 99th percentile. Logic and reasoning, 99th percentile. Problem solving, 99th percentile. He lowers the phone, his hand trembling slightly. He looks at Amara, and the power dynamic that has defined their relationship for months evaporates in an instant. The chasm between employer and employee, between architect and support staff, vanishes. He is no longer looking at his caregiver. He is looking at a genius, and he has no idea what to say. The fallout is immediate and profound. That evening, Catherine tries to congratulate Leo, her praise sounding hollow and confused. Miss Albright sends a baffled email expressing her pleasant surprise and taking partial credit for Leo's sudden and remarkable turnaround. But Arthur sees the truth. He knows exactly who is responsible. The next morning, he finds Amara in the kitchen, calmly preparing the twins' breakfast as if nothing has changed. The playbook she created for Leo is sitting on the counter, a quiet testament to her methods. Arthur picks it up, flipping through the pages, his respect growing with each turn of the page. The elegance of it, the sheer intelligence, is undeniable. He puts the notebook down and clears his throat. Amara, he begins, the name feeling different in his mouth now, heavier. I was wrong, completely and unequivocally wrong. It is an admission that costs him dearly, a forfeiture of the infallibility he wraps around himself like armor. What you have done for Leo is remarkable. I've never seen him so confident, so engaged. He slides a business check across the marble island. The number written on it is staggering enough to change a person's life. This is a bonus. A small token of my gratitude, and I'd like to offer you a new position, head of household staff. You can name your salary. You'll oversee all the tutors, the schedules, everything. You'll be in charge. Amara looks at the check, then back at him. She doesn't reach for it. Her expression is calm as always, but her eyes hold a new weight, a new authority. She is no longer the person who has to absorb his condescension. She is the person who holds the answers. What does real justice look like here? Is it a check, a title, a personal victory, or is it something more? Thank you, Mr. Sterling, she says, her voice polite but firm. She gently pushes the check back toward him. But I can't accept this. Arthur is stunned. I don't understand. The problem isn't my salary, she explains patiently, as if speaking to a student. And the problem wasn't just Leo's schedule. The problem is the system itself. The one you use in this house is the same one you use at your company. It's a system that nearly convinced your brilliant son that he was stupid. It's the same system that made you lose a brilliant analyst named Ramirez because he didn't fit the advancement track. Arthur flinches, shocked that she knows the name. You don't need a new household manager, she continues, her voice gaining strength. You need a new way of seeing talent. You're losing your knights, Mr. Sterling, in your company, in your home. You're letting them get captured because you only value the pieces that move in straight lines. Her choice of justice is not punitive. It is not about revenge or reward. It is restorative. It is systemic. She isn't asking for a promotion into the flawed system. She is demanding that the system itself be remade. I don't want a bonus, she concludes, her gaze steady and unflinching. I want you to fix the problem, all of it. Arthur Sterling is a man accustomed to giving orders, not taking them. Yet in the face of Amara's quiet, unassailable logic, he finds himself doing something he rarely does, listening. What do you propose? He asks, the question a genuine inquiry, not a challenge. Amara moves to the same glass wall in the library where Leo had his breakthrough. She picks up a black marker. The kitchen, the library, these domestic spaces have become her boardroom, her true seat of power. You can't manage what you can't measure, she begins, echoing a phrase he himself used often. But you're measuring the wrong things. Your company has a wealth of hidden talent that your HR metrics are designed to ignore. On the glass, she begins to sketch a flowchart. Her handwriting is clear and precise. At the top, she writes the night protocol. It's not a new department, she explains. It's a new lens. It starts with a company-wide hidden talents audit. You don't ask employees about their current job, you ask them what else they can do. Are they fluent in another language? Can they code in Python? Do they build furniture? Are they a chess master? You create a database of skills, not just titles. Arthur watches, captivated. This is not the vague philosophy he dismissed before. This is a concrete, actionable plan. Step 2, she continues, drawing another box. Cross-functional night squads. When you have a complex problem, like your supply chain issue, you don't just assign it to the logistics team. You pull a team from the database based on their hidden skills. You get a lawyer who is also a musician to look at contract language. You get an accountant who is also a poet to draft a marketing brief. You create deliberate, structured chaos to foster innovation. She draws a final box. Step 3, mentorship reform. You change the mentorship program so it's not just seniors teaching juniors. You create a system where a junior employee with a unique skill, a knight, can mentor a senior executive on how to see the board differently. She puts the cap back on the marker and turns to him. She has just outlined a complete overhaul of his company's human resources and innovation pipeline in less than 10 minutes on a glass wall. Would this change be enough in your workplace? For Arthur, it feels like a tidal wave. It's radical, terrifying, and undeniably brilliant. That afternoon, he calls an emergency virtual meeting of his executive board. He doesn't try to take credit. He sits in his home office, his laptop angled so the board members can see the library behind him, where Amara's diagram is still visible on the glass wall. For the past 5 years, he begins, his voice stripped of its usual arrogance, our guiding principle has been efficiency. We were wrong. Our new principle is ingenuity. He lays out the entire plan, calling it the Knight Protocol. He explains its origins with humbling honesty. There is silence on the call, then a flood of questions, of debate. But the logic is too powerful to ignore. By the end of the day, the board votes to approve a pilot program, championed by the CEO himself. The change has begun. It is no longer just an idea on a glass wall. It is now official company policy, a tangible named process designed to prevent the system from ever harming a mind like Leo's or losing a mind like Ramirez's again. Weeks pass. The Knight Protocol is slowly, painstakingly being implemented at Sterling Enterprises. The house, too, has changed. The rigid schedule on the refrigerator has been replaced by a more fluid one, with blocks of time labeled simply exploration. Miss Albright is gone, replaced by a new tutor who specializes in gifted children with unique learning styles. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Amara finds Leo and Meyer in the library, the chessboard between them. There is no pressure, no assessment looming. They are simply playing. Amara settles into the armchair, content to watch. The game is advanced, far beyond what she taught them. They are developing their own styles, their own strategies. Meyer is an aggressive, tactical player, a queen in the making. Leo, unsurprisingly, plays a knight's game, unconventional, creative, full of surprising moves that seem to come from nowhere. After a particularly clever move by Leo that traps Maya's bishop, he looks up at Amara, a proud grin on his face. "The fianchetto," he says. "I saw it 3 moves ahead." "I saw that you saw it," Amara replies, smiling. He grows quiet for a moment, contemplating the board. Then he looks at her, his expression serious. "You know," he says, his voice soft but clear, "everyone was trying to teach me what to think. You were the only one who taught me how I think." The words land gently, a quiet moment of profound acknowledgement. This is her real victory. It is not the corporate policy, not the newfound respect from Arthur, not the vindication. It is this: a child, once convinced he was broken, now understands and revels in the unique architecture of his own mind. He has reclaimed himself. And in his words, Amara reclaims a part of herself too. For years, she had been defined by her roles: student, analyst, and then, by circumstance, caregiver. She had allowed the world to label her, to put her in a box. In teaching Leo to see himself, she has relearned how to see herself, not as the role she plays, but as the mind she possesses. Her dignity, which she always held internally, is now reflected back at her in the eyes of a child she helped to heal, whose voice helped you heal when no one clapped. For Amara, it is the quiet, confident voice of a 10-year-old boy moving a small ivory horse, a boy who now knows the power of his own mind because she took the time to show him the map. It is a healing far more potent than any public applause. The pilot program for the Night Protocol is set to launch. Arthur has overseen the logistics, dedicating a significant budget and his own political capital to ensuring its success. But there is one final, crucial piece missing. He finds Amara on the patio, reading while the twins are at their new music lesson. He doesn't sit, but stands before her, a gesture of respect. "The program is ready to launch," he says. "The first cohort of managers has been selected. The curriculum is designed. We have consultants, facilitators, everyone is in place." He pauses. But it's missing its most important component. It's missing its architect. Amara looks up from her book, her expression patient. "I'm not asking you to be an executive," he says quickly, anticipating her refusal. "I'm not offering you a title or a corner office. I'm asking you to do what you do best. I'm asking you to teach." He slides a tablet onto the table beside her. It shows a proposed course schedule. The lead seminar is titled, "Seeing the Whole Board, An Introduction to Non-Linear Talent." The instructor slot is blank. "My managers," Arthur says, his voice earnest, "are all very good at playing their own piece. The head of sales is a great rook. The head of finance is a perfect bishop, but they don't know how to see the board. They don't know how to spot the knights. They need to learn from someone who does." It is the perfect form of recognition. It is not a reward for her loyalty or a gesture of charity. It is a direct, specific acknowledgement of her unique competence. He is not trying to fit her into his world. He is asking her to help reshape it. Recognition done right, agree. "I want you to lead these seminars, Amara," he finishes. "Not as a caregiver who has a hobby, but as the expert you clearly are. On your own terms, of course." She considers it for a long moment. This is a door opening not just for her but for others like her. It is a chance to scale her philosophy, to take the lessons forged at a kitchen table and instill them in the culture of a powerful corporation. "I will do it," she says finally, "on one condition." "Anything," he replies. "The first session," she says, a small smile playing on her lips, "is for the executive board, and you, Mr. Sterling, will be in the front row." It is not a demand for revenge, but for accountability. It is a door opening, ensuring that those at the very top are the first to learn the lesson that true power lies not in the position you hold, but in the potential you are willing to see in others. The training room at Sterling Enterprises is sleek and modern, a theater of corporate power. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic view of the city skyline. 30 of the company's top managers are seated at a U-shaped table, their skepticism a palpable force in the room. In the front row, as promised, sits Arthur Sterling, a pen and a fresh legal pad in front of him. Amara walks to the lectern at the front of the room. She is not wearing a uniform, but a simple, elegant dark blue dress. She seems neither intimidated nor impressed by her surroundings. She radiates a quiet, centered authority. She begins not with a slideshow or a corporate platitude, but with a story. She tells them about a brilliant boy who was convinced he was stupid because he couldn't see in straight lines. She tells them about a brilliant analyst the company lost because their metrics were blind. Then, she reaches into a small bag and pulls out a familiar object. She holds it up for all to see, the worn ivory knight. "For years," she says, her calm voice filling the room, "we have built our companies, our schools, and our teams to reward the pieces that move like this." She projects an image of a rook onto the large screen behind her. "Predictable, powerful, easy to measure. We love our rooks." She clicks to the next slide, showing a bishop. "We also love our bishops. They have a different angle, but they are still linear, still predictable." She clicks again. The screen goes blank. She holds up the small ivory piece in her hand. "But we punish, dismiss, or simply fail to see the most creative piece on the board. The one that doesn't follow the rules of linear movement. The one that jumps over obstacles. The one that sees the winning move from an angle no one else thought to look." She places the ivory knight on the lectern, its polished surface catching the light. It sits alone in the center of the vast wooden stage, no longer a child's toy, but the central icon of a new corporate philosophy. A symbol transformed. Once it was her private talisman, a hidden representation of a logic the world dismissed. Now it is a public lesson, a tool to teach a room full of powerful people how to see. "Most of your performance reviews," she tells them, her gaze sweeping across the room, are designed to find and promote rooks. My job is to teach you how to scout for knights. Did the object's meaning change for you too? In that moment, for everyone in that room, the small wooden horse ceased to be a game piece. It became a question, a challenge, a new way of understanding the very nature of talent. Amara stands beside it, a quiet master of a game they are all just beginning to learn, ready to teach them her next move. 1 year later, a sterile, glass-walled meeting room at Sterling Enterprises. A young data analyst, barely out of college, stands nervously before a group of senior vice presidents. She is presenting a proposal that is, by all accounts, absurd. It involves deliberately injecting randomized, chaotic variables into their ultra-efficient logistics software, a move that goes against decades of established protocol. The room is silent. The young analyst falters, bracing for the inevitable dismissal. Then, the senior VP of Global Operations, a notoriously tough old-school executive who had been in Amara's first seminar, leans forward. He taps a small silver pin on his lapel. It's a knight. That's a knight move, he says, a slow smile spreading across his face. The other VPs, all wearing the same pin, nod in understanding. It's their new shorthand, a piece of the culture. It's risky. It's unpredictable. Tell me more. The legacy is no longer just a policy in a binder. It is a language. It is a new instinct. It is a tangible sign of a system that is actively, consciously, looking for the talent it was once designed to ignore. The final scene is not in a boardroom. It is back at the Sterling's kitchen table. It is evening. The light is warm. Amara is there with Leo and Maya, now 11. An old, familiar chessboard is between them. They are laughing, deep in a complex game. The worn ivory knight sits near the edge of the board, retired from the match but present, a silent observer. Arthur Sterling walks in. He is not the same man who walked in here a year ago. The rigid set of his shoulders is gone. He leans down and kisses the top of each of his children's heads. He doesn't interrupt their game. He just watches, his expression one of quiet, profound gratitude. He looks at Amara and he nods, a simple gesture of respect that needs no words. She nods back, a gentle smile on her face. The room is the same, but everything within it has been transformed. She did not raise her voice, did not demand a promotion, did not seek revenge. She simply showed them a different way to see the board. And in doing so, she had not just won a game. She had changed the players, the rules, and the very meaning of victory. Her presence had changed the room and the rooms beyond forever. How many quiet revolutions, you might wonder, begin not with a shout but with a lesson patiently taught at a simple kitchen table?